Welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are available in podcast form. You can pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. Now out to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Scott. And I am Michael.
And I'm Margaret.
And she's Margaret. And you people are you people. And it's all going to be okay.
It is indeed.
It is indeed. And welcome to the Soul of Everyman, where the points tonight, they do count. So, we're going to be keeping score tonight. And tonight, the other thing we're going to be doing is we're going to do something we don't often do on the Soul of the Everyman. We're going to be a little topical. And the reason we're going to be a little topical is that right now in the world today, we're kind of all being told that we're facing sort of an existential threat. And in general, if we kind of drop ourselves back 50,000 feet back from the existential threat and from the blaring of all the alert sirens in the media, in general, that's always true.
Mm-hmm.
Life is a business which ends in death, as depressing as that is. But in fact, it is something we as adults certainly should grow to accept and then forget, as it should be, because the purpose of all life is not to dwell on its end. The purpose of all life is to live in the moment and to enjoy the now. But one of the reasons we're going to be a little bit topical tonight is that there are forces in our lives, and now collectively in all of our lives, that are really trying with almost desperate fervor to make us not live in the now, to make us live either in the unknown, fearful future, or in the kind of regretful past. We could have done, we should have done, we ought to have done all these things. And I heard a very wonderful phrase said, I'm not sure by who. They said, the British have a saying. The guy was British, and I didn't hold it against him, but we moved on. And he said, the British have a saying, and it's called Wawa. And I said, well, that's, a good, that's a nice convenience store that we have in the East. But what he said it stood for, Margaret, was we are where we are. And I thought that's a wonderful summation of really the idea, the sentiment that the past is done and the future is unknowable. We are where we are, which is in the present moment. And the forces that want to kind of spin us up, and it's not just today. Today is especially loud, these forces. But all the time they want to spin us up into regret for things that we should have done in the past, or fear to things that are coming in the future, that they're going to tell us all the horrible things that could happen any second, so that you shouldn't enjoy the present moment because God, it's all going to come crashing down. Are kind of encapsulated and defended against by this one simple phrase. We are where we are, which means we are in the present moment. We have all of our capacity to act. We have all of our capacity to remain centered and if not calm, at least aware.
Mm-hmm.
And the other kind of half of this, and I'll kind of set this up, and then we'll talk about it, is that the graphic that we put up on the website, whether it's there or not, it will be soon enough, because we are where we are. But the graphic that we are even now, the website is becoming full of, is that, and I saw this today too, and I share it with you, is that from a certain perspective, and you and I have a very different perspective from most people, if you've been through a tremendous trial, and we've been through a tremendous trial, and many people have, but in general, if you took people off the street, they haven't been, where something precious, something existential was either taken from you or you survived a tremendous trial, In our case, it was the death of our son. It changes your perspective. Your world has already been destroyed, and you've had to come to grips with that ground truth that you're not guaranteed tomorrow, and yesterday is gone and is immutable. And you come to grips with that ground truth in a very barren and seemingly lonely place. And then you have to rebuild your sense of the world from that perspective. And you can and you should rebuild. And you rebuild not in regret and not in fear, but in realization that the moment, the present moment, is all you ever have. And once you encapsulate that truth, it gives you a very different perspective. And what this quote says that we put up on the website is, from the perspective of folks who have been through this, that's what it's written about. They say there's a certain calmness and a quiet strength within us grievers at this time. Meaning they're really talking about right now, but it's at any time. As all about you panic, as those who seem to run with this kind of narrative of doom and gloom or regret, those who have grieved and rebuilt can draw on their resilience. They draw on the fact that they've already been there, and they understand that the unknowable, unknown future of fear is a chimera. It doesn't help you. And the immutable past is just that. You can't do anything about it. There's no sense of regretting or living in it. And which is what this quote says, you can get through. And you can survive. And you can, once having done that, it changes you. It makes you a different person. So between these two things is sort of the idea of we are where we are, and that, you have to kind of give yourself this moment of perspective, whether you've kind of survived that kind of trial and you have it already, or you realize that you will get through this and it will change you, but it will give you an idea of perspective about what life really is about. Is the attitude to kind of bring yourself forward, centering yourself in the time. You're in this time.
Well, I'm going to refer back to the previous show where you cannot be a victim and a victor at the same time. And it's understanding that if I'm going to go back to the quote that Tolai said, when you complain, you make yourself a victim. He gives you three choices. Leave the situation, change the situation, or accept it. All else is madness. And this, in a nutshell, describes what's going on right now. You can't leave the situation.
Nope.
You can't change the situation. Excuse me. All you're left with at that point is accept it. And we spoke at great length at what it meant to accept.
Yeah, to accept the situation. And you're right. I mean, how prescient of us to have that last week's show. I'm getting the look. No, but in fact, it wasn't prescient, and nor is it anything that was so incredibly insightful. But the idea of the phrase we just said, we are where we are, is acceptance in that time frame.
The acceptance has to do with understanding that what you're accepting is the fact that you don't control the situation. What you do control is your response to the situation.
Right.
So, if you complain, you claim the position of victim. and therefore have no influence on your own world because you are the victim.
Hmm.
And that means that all you get is to complain all the time.
Correct. And I don't want to go back to last week's show, but we talked about it, that there's a comfort in victim, and there's this reason why people claim the victim.
But the reason I'm bringing it up is because when you truly accept the fact that you really do control your own response to the situations that are around you, it is very freeing.
Yeah.
Because you are not a victim. But center of your own world, you make your own decisions.
Well, yeah, and so to come to this show, the last show, folks, you really should listen because it was a very good show. The idea that we have here is because what you just said, we can't change the situation, and it might also be helpful to sometimes realize that you really, in many times in life, you really can't change the situation. I'll talk about our own experience. We talked about it a little bit last week too. When you're presented with an existential diagnosis of cancer and it's your child, you would do anything to be able to change the situation. And yes, it's a blend of things because you do try. You don't say immediately that you accept it and there's nothing you can do. You say both. You both say that you would like to change it. You accept that this is the reality you're in now, but you will attempt to do anything you can to affect a change. There are certain situations which can't be changed. The fact that your child has cancer is an unchangeable situation. Whether in the future through some medicine or some treatment you can cure that cancer, you can restore their health, is not part of the argument, not part of the equation. The equation is that this change in your personal weather space, your personal situation has happened, and you can't undo it. You can't make it as though it had not happened. The situation that you find yourself in is where you are. So you accept the moment always. You accept the moment always. If you live in the past, if onlys, or in the future, again, we started with the show where every possibility can be thought about and worried about and waste all your time and energy trying to figure out, what will I do when this horrible thing happens? You completely remove yourself from where you are, and you become a victim by definition because you don't have any effective response. You just push yourself into the future and into the past. And it's very seductive. We talked about it last week, how seductive it is to be the victim. And to bring it to the current situation, there's I don't want to say a glee, but there's some sort of an excitement. It's an odd sort of breathless excitement that you find in many, many avenues of information, whether it's the internet or various types of media, that want to claim a sort of power. They assume the position of oracle. I can tell you what's going to happen, but you have to listen to me and follow my commands and my directives, because if you don't, even more horrible things will happen. So they use this position of harbinger, of the voice that speaks for the horrible thing that's happening, to influence, to make their own influence outsized. You can see it in writ small in the Weatherman. The Weathermen claim this prescience of what's going to happen, and they tell you you better put your galoshes on and brush your teeth and dance on the head of a pin because bad things are going to happen if you don't. And we kind of discount it. But in this case, the Weatherman is now like every voice or every channel that you look at.
Yeah. You have to pay attention when the voices are all screaming at you. You have to pay attention to your own inner peace.
Yes.
Because all that screaming is a distraction.
Mm.
And there is an internal discipline to be able to evaluate a situation. And that means that you don't indulge in fear because, frankly, it does little to the evaluation. You have the fear. You may have to deal with your fear. It's a separate thing from evaluating what is actually going on. But most people want to use fear as their motivator, as their be-all and end-all stick to measure how a situation should be run. It's by the amount of fear that's being generated. And that is a very, very, very dangerous thing. Because in fear, people will give over all kinds of personal power to somebody else.
And it's been used to exploit that reaction has been used rather to exploit control or to place control over people from the beginning of time. And it's used because it's effective. And it is erosive and corrosive to both your internal peace and to the peace of the society as a whole. Now, there are obvious times when a threat is big enough, when a situation affects a society or a world in general, that you need to work in concerted efforts. You need to put people into a situation where they are moving in a certain direction en masse, and it's important. But there's a tremendous temptation to exploit that, and there's a tremendous temptation to get used to that because it's an intoxicating power. One thing about people, which is from time immemorial, is we love, and this is speaking of all of us, we love power. We love to have our words influence and mean something, and you see it in media figures and actors and everyone from the guy at the front desk who gets on the pager, whose voice is amplified. We love the idea of power and that people are listening to us. But to bring it back to our theme, once you've kind of gone through this existential threat, you when you first go through it, the very first time through it, those voices of power, you cling to them because you think they must know something. I shouldn't trust my internal voice. I should trust them. I should trust this one. I should trust that one. And maybe some of them are well-intentioned. Maybe most of them are well-intentioned. But you said it just now. If you don't listen to your internal voice, you're no longer evaluating. You're being led. You're being you're given over your will into the control of another. And if that other is beneficent, yes, maybe you're not hurting yourself. You're only kind of giving up temporarily your will. But if that other is not so beneficent or gets used to the fact that they can control you this way, and people are, some people aren't judicious with power. And very many people aren't judicious with power. So your heart will rebel at those moments when you aren't listening to your internal voice, and your head will try to overrule. Because your head will tell you, oh, but the future, oh, but the past. And it's exceedingly important to not allow your head to overrule your heart in this situation, your internal voice to be overruled by these external shouting voices.
And your heart is not your emotions. I want to make that quite clear because most people say, oh, it's what I feel. It's like, no, you don't feel fear. And any of the other emotions. It's understanding that you are, what's the word? You understand that you are not controlling the situation. You are participating in the situation. And when you evaluate, you take in the facts, not the spin.
Mm.
Okay? What you need is the facts, because someone's telling you, well, it's going to happen this way because this and this and this, and let's project the worst possible scenario, because you really need to know what the worst possible scenario is. And you sit there and you go, okay, what's the counterbalance to that then? Because you can't just do one side. You have to do both. And you will discover that the spin has a tendency, when you're listening to it, to tire you out tremendously, because it's actually feeding on your reactions.
Right.
So when you're feeling tired after listening to somebody talk, that should be a red flag to you to pay attention. Have you given permission for this person to have that much power over you?
Mm.
Is it valid at all? Taking the worst case scenario is good just to take it into account, but you don't dwell on it. And the problem is things around you want you to constantly dwell on the worst case scenario. Worry about it. Worry greatly about it. Things that you have no control over.
Don't go too fast, Pat, because that's a perfect. I want to go back and talk about what you just said. The idea, when you feel that tiredness, and I'll relate it back to our situation. When our son was diagnosed with cancer, it puts you into the mode where you feel drained. You feel enervated, completely enervated. You feel as though your life is being drained from you, and you don't understand. I say, well, this is a situation that we should be putting all of every energy onto the table, and we did, and we will. And in going through that whole situation, we learned, especially near the end, that the voices that were moving us and enervating us, taking our energy, didn't help, and they don't help. And your heart knows it, and Christopher knew it before we did. That experience is something which most people haven't gone through. But once you have gone through it, you get to the point where you can feel that tiredness, and you can actually identify it. You can identify it as just what you just said, is that these voices in the guise of helping, or in the guise of warning, or in the guise of trying to have you consider all the possibilities, are taking something from you. They offer what appears to be value, but they don't. But the exchange is not valid, because the value they're offering is in the price that they're demanding for it is that you give them your will and your energy. And
do it my way.
Do it my way. Exactly. Put it exactly in the right encapsulate. Do it my way, and give over your will, because I ask you for it in exchange for this, for this token, this information token, whatever it is. And it's very tempting. And when you're scared, it's even easier. When you're fearful of the future, or when you've been told that you've done it wrong and you have to do it right, but your heart knows. Your heart knows that there's something inequitable about this. Now, again, this isn't done always with inimical inimical motives or with ulterior motives. And sometimes for a brief period of time you can move in that direction because it isn't black and white. It's not some sort of an absolute. But you ignore the heart voice, not the emotion voice, but the heart voice, the stillness inside you, the part of you that is the being, not the head voice. You ignore it to your peril.
It is the one voice that offers you hope.
Hope.
Real hope.
Right.
And you begin to learn how to discern the difference between that voice and all the other voices that want to be helpful.
Mm.
When you are in a situation where life is on the line, the life of your child is on the line, you learn to distinguish very quickly the motivations behind what is being said and what reasonings may be put in there. But is it heart true? In other words, at its core, is it resonating to the heartbeat? In our experience, would be the heartbeat of our child, the heartbeat of Christopher. And that's when you begin to choose, because you can't put somebody else's opinion over the voice of your child's heartbeat. That's horrifying. But there were many people who did do that. Many parents did do that. And you began to be able to tell the difference of that voice.
Right. And in specific, our situation, and there are many others that were like it, many other people have gone through this. But if you take it broadly, people haven't gone through this. And so it's very tempting, especially if it's something that's foreign and unusual, and it's taking you out of your comfort zone, to want to cling to these voices and to ignore the heart voice. But you'll find yourself tired, enervated, fearful, and dislocated. You'll feel almost. People have said that there's been a lot of talk over this current topic of feeling like surreal. Like, well, I don't know what's going on. Yes, all that is warning signs from your heart voice that you're getting too far away from being. You're being pulled into the fearful future or into the regretful past.
You are living in your fear. And fear is not something that you generate within yourself. It's got to be fed by others. That's why they always want to have more people joining in that chorus of fear.
And again, what we said at the beginning, we're not saying to be foolhardy, because foolhardiness is just another way of not listening to your heart voice. The point is that lovely little phrase, we are where we are. We are in this moment. This is a great moment. But it is the moment in which you get to act for yourself, for your loved ones, in the being voice, listening to the being voice, informed, absolutely, given the information, given the situation, know where you are, because where we are is important to know where you are. Don't imagine what's going to happen.
No, but that's core to that phrase, is understand that this is where you are at. And we apparently are at.
We're at the point where we should take a little break. But we are where we are. Let's take a little break, and we'll come back and we'll talk more about the strength within.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
The Timeless Esoterica radio program with Dr. Bruce is broadcast on the 4th Monday of every month at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on ArtistFirst.com. We explore topics including the paranormal, alien life, mysteries, conspiracies, hidden history, oddities, and much more. Each show will feature a special guest with exciting and thought-provoking discussion. Always keep an open mind, an open heart, live forever, and remember Dr. Bruce believes in you.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
Hi, this is Hannah Ruth from the band Wild Hum. Check out our new Americana Soul CD, Wild Hum, at our website, wildhum.music.com. And you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Thank you.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lyons is book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
You are listening to The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Your questions and comments are most welcome. Hit us up at dj@artistfirst.com. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you, Scott. And see, we survived the commercial break. Well, and in all seriousness, we will survive this current situation. And I think, Margaret, that the first half hour and also the show that we had talked about, our prior show, where we're talking about the difference between a victor and a victim, or the difference between understanding that accepting a situation doesn't mean that you agree with the situation. It doesn't mean that you do nothing about the situation. The current, so this current environment that we're in seems overwhelming to, I would say, 9 out of 10 people, because we talked a little bit in the first half hour, but if you haven't had your world kind of taken apart or torn apart, and most people haven't, they've lived a relatively orderly life. They haven't had a tremendous amount of tsunami or something coming in and just ruining everything, wrecking their whole the fire or whatever. They just haven't had that happen to them. And so this seems both overwhelming as well as sort of surreal. We've heard the word surreal and almost being bandied about, because I think in this moment of overwhelm, and I think most people are in sort of a moment of overwhelm, people do feel, unable to process what's going on in their lives. And so you see this sort of panicking and running around with their, and then add on top of that you then, when your heart is troubled and you're not centered anymore, we are where we are, you're out there, you run into this a different kind of tsunami, this tsunami of yelling voices. And these yelling voices want to distract you, grab your attention, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me, or the most horrible thing will happen next and you won't know about it. And you have competing yelling voices and various levels. Your money's going, your bread is going, there's no toilet paper left. So, all these voices are exploiting our tendency to, when we're troubled, to look for surety, to look for reassurance, to look for somebody who will tell us what to do, rather than rely on once you've been through this, and unfortunately, when you have been through it and your world has been taken apart, you realize that none of those things, it's not that they don't matter, but none of those things are the truth. The truth is to be taking all those things within and then listening to the heart voice. But if you haven't been there, if you haven't gone through it, you're knocked out. You feel like you're disconnected from your body. And all these yelling voices are a maelstrom of listen to me, do what I say, be afraid, and you're suddenly buffaloed. And you're right. People become from a person who has a being state, maybe not perfectly in touch with it, to somebody who's completely outside of their existence and being pushed along like a river, pushed along like a tide, pushed along like a mob.
Well, it's exactly a mob mentality that's being cultured, almost initiated, and then focused into a certain way, because they understand that the panic that has been coming up is there. And humans, when they realize they are in a situation that they cannot control, have different responses. Most people go into, they will either do the fear, based in fear, either they're blaming somebody or complaining, which is both a victim mentality. And I love seeing on the internet what the Italians are doing. They're all quarantined in their apartments, and they're all singing on their balconies together. It's like, well, we're here. Let's all sing because we enjoy singing.
That's a wonderful kind of observation of the spirit, and we talked about it a little bit in the second half of this quote. What they're doing, what the Italians are doing, is drawing on something which everybody has. Again, close to the heart, we have our resilience. When you push a person off center for some period of time, they're off balance, they're off center. But then if you come to yourself, you say, I can do this. I'm not going to allow myself. You feel this drain, and if you push back and cut off the voices and say, I don't care how often you tell me it's going to be horrible and everything's bad. I'm going to take it within and touch upon my resilience and find others like myself who are also perhaps afraid. But in the moment, we sing together.
Right. It's understanding that you're sharing the most important thing, which is being together and experiencing the moment. And they're just singing beautifully, social distanced,
Yes, yes, yes,
but voices in unison.
yes.
And it's a beautiful response to a situation that you cannot control. Um, Also, it has to do with understanding that it doesn't mean that you're disregarding what you're being told. Okay? I am going to emphasize that. You do not ignore what you are being told, what the possible repercussions are, but you don't revisit it over and over and over again unless there's a new piece of information. And it's got to be whole information, not just pieces that tell a certain type of story. And you become very sensitive, as I said, when you realize the motivation behind someone telling you something. You know, if it doesn't feel balanced and whole, you just sort of look at it like, oh, kind of place it in its appropriate pile. I will examine this when I choose to.
Well, you said this before in a previous show. The resonance.
Mm-hmm.
Your heart is a truth detector, and if you listen to it, it's not that you ignore the information, but it will tell you whether there's a spin, or whether this person is giving you half the information and trying to manipulate. Because those things, the heart instantly detects the falseness, the false note.
Yeah, and it's all based on partial truths.
Mm.
And there's your heart knows when there's a certain flavor there. You look and you know something's missing.
Right.
You know, if you taste the soup, there's not enough salt in it. There's salt missing. You know,
Yes.
there's a rightness, a trueness that your heart tells you about. And to become sensitive to that, because especially in this environment, there's plenty of things that will tell you a story.
Yes.
Everything wants your attention. Everything wants to tell you a story. But you have to protect your heart, because your heart doesn't need garbage in it.
Mm.
Doesn't need to be pulled in many different directions. To hold heart true means that you will listen, but you will also discern. We are where we are takes that into account.
Yes. Yes, and you can, you can very quickly get to a point when you listen to your heart that you'll say, okay, I understand where we are. Now, when something new happens, we operate from a base of where we are, not pulling along the past, regret, not full of the fearful future, what if, and then it gives you the amazing ability to take in what seems like a whole new, perhaps even more serious development, and say, okay, where we are, we see this coming, this is now new, we will do another step. So you turn yourself from being someone that is being manipulated into someone who is accepting, and then acting if we can act, if we can do anything.
You are open enough to accept new pieces of information, because if you continually listen to the same thread over and over again, you believe that there's nothing new possible.
You're blocked.
You think you have all the information. It's like nothing could be further from the truth. Things change, and things can change in a heartbeat.
That's the essence of hope.
Mm-hmm. So when you understand that, when you truly understand that things change, and it's not controlled by the people who say they have the control.
In our situation with Christopher, we had many days when things were pretty bad looking, when we had a bleak outlook. And we would say to ourselves, I remember saying this to you specifically, we would say, okay, all these things could happen, and all those things have happened in the past. But today, now, things are good. We may die, something may happen, bad things could, but it's not right now. Right now, we're good. And so living we are where we are also means that you don't borrow fear and let it ruin your present, or you don't borrow regret and let it ruin your present.
You wind up ruining the time you have together with, in our case, with our Christopher.
Yes.
You basically would choose to live that moment in fear instead of living that moment with him.
Yeah.
And enjoying whatever was unfolding in front of you. Or it may not be enjoyment. It may be you have to slog your way through something painful, something that's a process that you'd rather not be a part of. But you did it because this was necessary.
That's the moment. Mm-hmm. The wonderful example of these people in Italy singing together is, we know the situation is bad. We know what happened. We know what may happen. But right now, in this moment, we're going to sing.
Mm-hmm.
And in that heart moment, you find an amazing amount of solace, which you were looking for from all the yelling voices, which you won't get, but you will get it there. You'll find an amazing amount of renewal. And instead of feeling exhausted and enervated, you'll feel energized. Mm-hmm. You'll feel renewed by that fact of being in the moment, because that's an energy gatherer. That's a respite. It's an ability to then gather your energy and act in the next moment. But as you said, the thing about the yelling voices is they want you to say that everything is already determined and there's nothing you can do. And hope says nothing is determined, and that's good, because that means something can change. And people say, well, it could be worse. And you say, could be better. You know? And they hate that. You're like, oh, what do you mean could be better? Yes, because both possibilities and all possibilities are on the table, and hope loves that. Hope is a thing of possibility, not a false hope where everything's going to be good tomorrow. No, everything's going to be different tomorrow is the essence of hope.
Mm-hmm. And life continues.
And that's resilience.
Mm-hmm.
The resilience is that while, people say, while you have breath, you have hope. Because each breath, each time you wake up in the morning, is a new day. Each breath is a new breath. And the fact that you get to draw another one is a new possibility. The problem that the yelling voices want you to think about is that you don't have any other life except what they yell at you. And you have to realize that every part of your life, from the moment the first breath you drew to the last one you'll let go of, is not guaranteed, but yet every moment can be lived, and the next moment will be different and possibly great. But don't dwell on the possibly great or the possibly bad. Just know that this moment, where you are right now, where you are, wah, we are where we are, is the moment you have to live now. Totally loves it. It's a power of now. Power of now says, don't worry about the past. It's immutable and unchangeable. Don't worry about the future. It's unknowable. You have right now what you know, what you can put your hands and your heart on. And in that moment, the yelling voices don't matter anymore because they're just part of the background.
Well, it's again part of his saying last week was, all else is madness.
Exactly.
Those are the voices of madness.
In some ways, they're the voices who want you to join them in madness.
Well, again, we go back to there is no generating of spirit and hope or energy in those voices. They have to feed off of someone else, and they would need other people to join them in order to feed off of them. Otherwise, they can't exist. That will die. Fear will die if no one is putting any energy to it.
Oh yeah, if you wish to see somebody who is trying to do this to you become frustrated, you refuse to despair. You said they tell you all the things why you should be going, why you shouldn't have any hope. And we had, again, our own experience many, many times when they would tell us, you shouldn't have any hope everything's going to be horrible. And now what do you want to do next? And we go, well, I think we'll keep on going. I think that we'll live this moment and we'll live the next one. And it was just, some of them would understand because they didn't want us to. But others were just almost frustrated that you wouldn't join them in the madness, that you wouldn't despair. And they would look at you and go, oh, you don't know. And
Well, you don't. The attitude was, gee, you don't know what you're talking about. You guys are in an illusion somewhere. You can't.
Right.
And you're sitting there going, you don't understand.
You don't understand.
But that's okay. You may be working here in this hospital, but you don't understand what you are witnessing in front of you because it's not touching you.
And it would drive them even crazier when they would dismiss you with the, oh, you're false hope and you don't know what you're talking about. And we go, you still don't understand. And it would just drive them, dude. You know. And it's not it wasn't your intention to do that, but they were so invested in being the yelling voice of authority that was telling you what to do, that when you didn't give them that countenance, didn't give them your will, didn't allow them to invade your heart, it frustrated them. And I think at some level, they were almost envious of the ability to remain in the heart and in the moment despite everything. Because it took a long time to get there. It took a long time for us to realize that and to cultivate that. And Christopher led the way. You know, these kids in the cancer wards led the way. They knew before we knew, all of us. And it took courage to follow them there. But when we were all there, it was a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yes. And it's understanding that you do not control your death.
Mm-mm. Or your life, for that matter.
Well, you take steps into participating in life, but that leads to the illusion that you're controlling it somehow.
Yep.
It also means that you must take steps into participating with your death.
It scares people.
But that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. And it's not macabre or in any way, you're not looking at death as an end, nor are you looking at life as purposeless. The living of each moment encapsulates both possibilities and accepts them and lives them.
Mm-hmm. What I'd like to point out is the one thing that we did see repeatedly in those cancer wards is that the way you live your life, the way you approach your life, is the way you will approach your death. People that embraced life and walked forward no matter what was going on also met their death that way. And the ones that were running away constantly, oh no, it's not this or it's not that, they met their death that way as well, avoiding it as much until it was there.
And again, it was what it was. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So when you realize that this happens, you must understand that it matters the way you live your life. Because in meeting your death, the end, is the way you enter into the next stage. Are you entering into the next stage blinded, not looking forward, not looking at all, eyes closed? Or are your eyes open and your arms thrown wide open to receive the next influx of life that you're going to be walking in? And that is something to really think about. Because if you look at your life, have you lived your life running away? Or have you lived your life going forward, not being hampered by fear? Because fear is what it is that makes you close your eyes and run away from your next encounter, away from the experience of going through a threshold, a doorway into another place.
Yeah, or not living the moment of life moment by moment. Fear will take you out of the sweetness of life.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there are many who, when you say things like that, they'll reject it because they're running from the fact that life and death are encapsulated in the being. The being is both.
Yes, it strikes fear in most people, frankly. Yeah. And I understand because I'm sure people are, oh no, that can't be. Oh no. It's look,
that's okay.
You know what?
It's okay.
I'm blessing you. You live and it will all unfold in front of you. Just be open to the moment unfolding in front of you.
And in existential times, and the current moment is an existential time. We are confronted by these truths, and we have the choice made much more stark and plain. It's always there, but people cover it up with whatever it is, the current flavor of the moment. But the choice is always there, and when it's uncovered, when you see life truly as it is, you can react with fear if you haven't, if you didn't realize the business that you were in, life, and the fact that it is a being business. When it's truly presented to you, that there is a natural fear, and then when you have the yelling voices who want to exploit that fear, they push you way off, way out. If you find yourself being drained and feeling enervated and feeling like the surreal that people keep talking about, that's the signal that you've got to stop and come back to center and find your heart and your resilience and realize that this was always the way. This was always what was happening, and it was kind of covered up by all the stuff. And when it's uncovered and you feel it, there's a little fear, and they want to push you into greater fear. Don't let them. Let them.
You have to recognize that you are in fear, because it's very easy when those loud voices are yelling to think that, oh no, if this is just, this is supposed to be reasonable and we should be doing it. It's like, no. You need to understand when fear rises up in you and understand that it's natural to have that reaction, but you got to process it. You can't just keep pushing it down, because it will become an unseen fear that will motivate what you do next.
And, as this end of our quote says, having faced the end, having faced this through, and follow your heart and come back to your being, you'll know in the end, when you come through this, that you'll get through anything. This will change you, and it will change you and become much more in tune with who you really are, where you really are, where we all really are in this moment.
And I believe we have reached the end of our show.
That's the moment.
Mm-hmm. We are where we are.
We are where we are.
So I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for listening.